Talk about all the Path of Exile stuff. Path of Exile had Exile Con the past 48 hours, I think. Yeah, that started on Friday.
Yep.
Wrapped up last night with the race outside of PoE 2, which we'll talk about in just a sec. If you're wondering if any of those panels or any of the things that they showed are worth watching, if you're even not interested in PoE, but you're interested in just ARPGs, they did a panel last night with kind of like the gods of ARPG. They had the original creators of Diablo, Diablo 1, Diablo 2, the creators of, Torchlight, and like one or two other just like the goats of ARPGs. It's an hour long. Kriparian was the host for it. An incredible panel. It was absolutely incredible to like hear from the guy that created The Butcher and how every ARPG is like tried to emulate The Butcher. Yeah. And like no one's gotten close to how scary The Butcher was in Diablo, of opening that door and just getting obliterated. And yeah, it was a very good panel. They talked about a ton of different things, ranging from like how they handle currency, how they handle trading, how they handle items. They got asked if they would ever like form the Avengers of ARPG and make a game together. It's worthwhile. It's an hour long. Go watch it. I forget the full name of the panel, but it should be on, I would think, their Twitch channel still VOD-wise. If not, they might cut it out and put it on their YouTube channel. So definitely check it out if you're interested in that stuff. That being said, the main focus of ExileCon was Path of Exile 2. And it was an interesting weekend of all of that news. The biggest aspect of all of that, they came out right out of the gate and said that Path of Exile 2 is no longer an expansion to Path of Exile 1. They will be standalone games with separate game balance, systems, and future expansions. Your purchases still will be shared between both games. And that alone is a massive conversation point. And Coh's response is appropriate.
I am
where do you
so
fall?
excited for this. I love it.
Yeah,
I think it's fantastic. I think it's amazing. I am super jazzed that it is its own thing. I think one thing that I've always said about Path of Exile is that it's a phenomenal game, but it's so like at this point, I'm going to use the term. I'm going to say it. It's so bloated at this point with all of these super complex game mechanics that it like almost feels impossible to be doing everything right. Just because there's so much depth in each one of those mechanics that it just gets ridiculous. So it's the kind of thing where I'm thrilled that they're essentially now making the decision to reset with Path of Exile 2. That means that when you go in for the first time, it's not going to be Path of Exile 2 plus 9 leagues that you don't know how to do any of them efficiently or well. It's going to be just Path of Exile 2 and everything involving that. You can spend time learning all the base systems of the game. You can focus on learning the new dodge stuff, the new gem system, like all this stuff, not have to worry about anything else. And then hopefully get that down in time for the first expansion and then really focus on that one expansion, because now you have the base mechanics and the expansion only. So it's basically like, it's interesting because one of the things I've been loving doing recently is playing this old game called EverQuest on progression servers. And one of the reasons I love that so much is that it strips the game back down to just base stuff that I know and understand, and then slowly adds more to it. And I feel like that's exactly what they're doing with PoE 2. And that makes me incredibly happy.
I don't know where I sit on it. I started when they announced it. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I watched PoE 2 gameplay and I like heard them say a lot of things in the interviews of like, yeah, if something is good in PoE 1, we'll port it over into PoE 2. And then I just start to think,
no.
Well, why the fuck does PoE 1 still exist then? If
Hold on.
Just going to port stuff over. Like,
now chat, there's people in chat saying, yes, Cohh got it completely wrong. Leagues will be there. I think that's the whole point of them announcing it's two different games, right?
Yes and no. Like, they will still bring stuff over from PoE 1 if it works well. Like, they straight up said that. If there are things that are implemented into Path of Exile 1, it will be put into Path of Exile 2.
But what about, like, for instance, is Path of Exile 2 going to have Blight and Betrayer? And, like, is that all
potentially? I don't know if they have said yes or no to the specifics of all of that stuff.
That's saying yes.
It depends on, like, what it is. I think Delirium
Most
was
likely. Oh, so does
confirmed.
anyone know for sure?
Yeah, it's the other big caveat around this entire conversation is closed beta starts a year from now. So anything that they fucking say could change from a year between now and
Okay.
then. Like that's maybe the whole thing. The negative of the whole event was they show all of this stuff and people are like, oh man, okay. They're going to have something in 6 months. They're going to have something in 3 months. Is it going to be playable today? They drop that the closed beta starts a year from now. And everyone was just kind of like, oh, okay. So, all right. I guess we'll see you in a year.
So apparently what has been said is that there will be versions of those league mechanics.
They're going to have to iterate and figure out how they want to bring it in. Yeah. Yeah. And like the complication aspect, I think it's still going to be super complicated. In some ways, even more complicated.
Oh yeah, dude.
Like they're going to have, they showed that you can have, just like in PoE 1, you can have 2 weapons equipped, but you can have different specs
lines
on your tree. So when you switch weapons and use a different skill, it automatically swaps to that other spec when you're using that weapon when it comes to the passive tree. And like,
that's crazy.
That it's like, oh, so I'm going to have to, I mean, that seemed minor. It's like go on one side of the tree and the other one goes on the other side of the tree. But like, I don't, it's, the whole thing is just weird to me, I think, ultimately. Like the more I thought about it, the more I watched, it is a weird decision. And it was also strange when like Jonathan, the game director for PoE 2 was on stage doing interviews. And they would just constantly say things like, oh, I hate in PoE 1 when blah. And I'm like, but that you're not, the game still exists. And like, you guys are still you can't just say that game sucks or that part of the game sucks when you're still working for the same company. Like, it just came off as weird to me that they were just like kind of saying things that were bad about PoE 1 and things they wanted to change in PoE 2. The whole thing just was strange in that regard. So I'm curious what happens a year from now, and if they stick to this idea that like PoE 1 is going to continue to exist and evolve as its own game, and PoE 2 is going to exist and evolve as its own game. We'll see, right? Like anything can happen in a year. I think is really where my mind is at. It's also very evident.
It is interesting that they put all this out there and then said it's a year, which makes me wonder, like, if they're doing this specifically so they can make any major changes.
In PoE 2,
like,
you mean?
Huge based on huge community feedback kind of thing.
Well, yeah, that's the whole other side of the thing, is they had plenty of streamers. So, like, this is the official, like, gameplay showcase that the developers are playing on stage, and it was all very much, it wasn't pre-recorded or anything, and he died fighting the boss, so it was like a real demo. When the streamers got into those gameplay showcases, specifically the first 2 or 3, there are factors, and I do want to state that they were playing the game like it is PoE 1, but it looked fucking bad. And like the general community consensus was that it looked like ruthless, and it looked way too hard, and it looked not fun. But then they got Kriparian.
Really?
Yeah, they got Kriparian to play it, and he played it like it was PoE 2, and he played Act
PoE
2.
1?
Or yeah, he played it like it was a different game, like it's PoE 2. In Act 2, which is what he played, the gear wasn't as crazy when it came to the scaling. So like the gear was appropriate for the content that he was fighting, and he was using a new character, and it looked awesome. Like it looked super fun. And so I think like having the streamers play the different gameplay showcases was a kind of a bad call.
Just so we're on the same line here. When you say one looked bad and one looked fun, are you saying that when it looked fun, he was killing like more enemies quicker, more movement? Like what is a very subjective term. So I'm wondering what that means kind of in concrete
Mathel
terms.
started his gameplay stream yesterday. He walked into the first pack of mobs, died in 8 seconds to it.
Okay.
That's not a good
dodge roll? They dodge roll.
He dodge rolled into them, maybe. He didn't really, he just like
because
walked
the
into
dev
them and died.
specifically said if you don't dodge roll, you're gonna die to the first pack of mobs like 4 times.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Again, he was playing it like it's PoE 1. But regardless of how he was playing it, it still didn't come across as like, wow, that looks fun. It was like, wow, this looks like ruthless PoE. And for a lot of people, that's not the game they want to play because it's not what you're used to in other aspects of PoE.
Okay.
But like I said, Kriparian playing in Act 2, which is maybe something that was not super overtuned, it looked really good. I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Here's an interesting thing to think about. Do they want this game to feel completely different because they want to just keep developing and making PoE 1 for those that prefer that type of gameplay?
Yes and no. I mean, they did state like they did say that the game will speed up as you get higher level and get gear and like it will look like PoE 1 in some aspects, but it's not going to be the same craziness of PoE 1 on like the hardcore side where you're clearing a map in like a minute or whatever, right? Like you're just zooming across the entire map.
Because I have to admit, I mean, in watching even the devs play it during the main showcase, I thought it looked pretty cool. Looked a lot slower, looked a lot more tactical, a lot more methodical. Like,
yeah, I thought that aspect looked good.
Yeah, I don't need to, go through a map like Sonic, clearing everything as fast as possible, just, listening for drops that I'm not even going to see drop because I'm so far ahead.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder if maybe that's even accentuating the fact that they're trying to make it a completely separate game. Like they're trying to actually fork the gameplay style of the game into like slower tactical 2, speedy Sonic style 1, and then kind of lean into those as they continue to schism.
It was as someone who's like seen the criticism around PoE 1's ruthless mode, which for people that don't play, it's a mode that was recently introduced that is like exponentially harder. It's a lot slower. You can't, resources are a lot more scarce. It felt like Ruthless was the testing ground for PoE 2. And that is worrisome to me as someone who thinks Ruthless mode is like not the type of experience that I'm looking for. And maybe the answer to that is like, oh, well then just play PoE 1. Maybe that's the
and maybe
answer.
maybe that's what they're looking for. A couple things. They from Eero Arik says, they said they will not have Quicksilver, movement skills, or benchcraft in PoE 2.
Yep.
So it does seem like they're absolutely leaning into that.
Yeah.
And then Proka says the gear and build the demo character started with had almost no defensive stats, which is a big reason they were dying so easily, and then linked a Reddit thread.
Yeah.
It looks like they tried to comb over them in. And that's also interesting considering how big of a deal that is in PoE.
It was, the gear was kind of rough. 100%.
That's interesting that they did that, for sure.
And so that it was, like I said, having watched like almost everything that they showed, I was very like conflicted in opinion. Like again, I started off very much into it when watching
very different.
This. Yeah,
very different. The boss fight, I will say, the boss
fights look great.
No, I think they're way too spongy.
Oh, for me, I think they look great.
I thought, especially
let me
like,
show you.
Here's the thing that I was plugging into. The dude got what, 50% through and then died.
Yeah.
And then when he went back in, you could almost see him not having fun.
Sure.
And it makes me wonder if like maybe that's just a gear thing. Maybe it'll speed up a lot with that. But like chat is making the very good point where it's like it very well could have been just 100% gear dependent. But I will say that like that looked. I loved the mechanics. I loved the look. But the whole fight could have taken half as long, and I think it would have been just fine.
Yeah. So
it looked great. Like that was the only part about it that I thought was a little weird.
So
I felt like he was poking him with a little tiny toothpick kind of thing.
Funny that I just showed him dying. In Kriparian's playthrough, he had a random item drop, and he crafted on it, and it rolled percentage for physical damage, so he got a better weapon. The second that he got that weapon, it immediately shifted to more like PoE 1 style gameplay. Like things started dying. He got an upgrade. He got a like level appropriate gear for the mobs that he was fighting. And it looked so much better. This is after he had already swapped off of that because he's playing the Act 4. This is towards the end of Act 2, which he was playing the Huntress, I think. They announced a shit ton of classes.
Yeah,
But like
they did.
that ability right there, the lightning spear, the one where he's just chunking it down, like packs are dropping as fast as they do in PoE 1. And that's where I was like, oh, great. Like it's still there. It still has that aspect of like you're able to kill a lot of mobs at a very quick pace. And so if anything, out of all the different gameplay sessions that they had, Kriparian's session, which was admittedly 30 minutes longer than anyone else had with the game on stream, his was an hour, everyone else's was 30. It looked the best. This is when I was like, okay, great, I'm on board. I'm into it. And the class looked fun. And it might have been also because everything that's here is not in PoE. And so it was this like, okay, this is a different game. You're not seeing similar skills. You're not seeing the similar classes. It's a whole new thing. Also, yeah, mobs drop gold. Another giant, massive change. All the merchants, they basically wanted them to like have meaning instead of not have meaning, like they currently are in PoE 1. So everyone uses
it's just
gold.
so much easier to understand.
Yeah,
it's so much easier. I mean, the
other stuff does exist.
Where it's like
the other
things
still exist.
It's always had usefulness for what it is, and then it was a currency on top of that.
Yeah.
So now to have it, but it's not like, a nickel, dime, and quarter. Like it was just like arbitrary, randomly assigned things at different areas. So I personally love the gold change. I think it's going to make it a lot easier also for new players to kind of understand how all that works and not have to rely on, these arbitrary tables of value and stuff. So
yeah,
I think that's great.
Yeah. There is a lot of other stuff. We're getting into the weeds.
Also, I love gold.
You love gold? Well, how do you feel about stackable gold only to 5,000 and it takes up inventory slots?
I think you is what I think about that. I think that we need to. I think there's a year to do testing and feedback, and I think that changes can be made, and I think that's okay overall.
Yeah, there's some interesting.
I can't wait to hear how much the gold stash tab is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly, and it just
stackable up to 500,000 per slot. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
It does make me wonder if there's like no stacks of gold in your bank. I wonder if it's just a mechanic to make it so you can't carry a ton on you. And then you get back to your bank and it's like, boom, you can just deposit it kind of thing. But yeah. I will say the idea of like limiting the total amount of gold you can carry on you to as many stacks of 5,000 as you can have in your character. Like it's good. The big thing is it's going to be interesting to see what they do with gold because we don't know that yet. We know generally it's going to be used for NPC trading, but are they expecting it to become a currency that players trade with each other? Because
they were asked
that's gonna.
Jonathan said it most likely you'll still use everything else for trade just because gold will kind of, it's like, do you trade Town Portal and Scroll of Identity scrolls?
Cat is saying they said straight up no. Gambling and NPC stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That makes sense.
But again, it's up to the players because it's a player run economy. So maybe there will be some sort of trading aspect for it. I don't know.
We'll see.
We will see. It was a lot. There's a lot of stuff that they talked about. And again, beta is a year out, which means that we're 18 months out from live, maybe even longer than that. And then you have to factor, like the meme of the weekend was like D4 bad, right? Like D4 is in the honeymoon phase of Diablo 4 is over. And I think the recent patches have also put kind of a stain on that game. Even they even did
with D4 might be over, but our new girlfriend ain't getting here for a year. So
that's exactly right. And you have to think if we're 12 to 18 months out, that means D4 has 5 to 7 seasons and possibly one expansion to, quote unquote, get good.
And think about Diablo 3's progression when it released. I mean, yeah,
that's right.
That's wild. That's wild.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
It's okay though, because we get Last Epoch soon. Woo.
We get what?
Last Epoch.
Last
Epoch is supposed to be in 4 or 5 months, I think. We'll see.
Yeah. ARPG folks are eating good. Anyways,
Last Epoch can be our temporary girlfriend.
Maybe. Yeah.
Friends with ARPG with benefits.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So if I have this straight, like there is no playable anything right now of PoE2, right?
Correct.
Nope.
Okay.
Unless you were there in person, then you could play.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. And there won't be for a year. Which again, that was it really like took the wind out of the sails of the entire announcement of like,
A little bit.
here's 2 hours of
time.
like, oh yeah, this looks cool. I'm excited. They're talking about it so much, and you can potentially play it in a closed beta session a year from now.
It's important to add though, respect for the when it's done.
Totally.
Respect for the when it's done. If there's anyone that knows how much people want PoE 2, it's GGG. They absolutely could rush something out the door if they wanted to. And it would probably be a mess, and it probably wouldn't be fine-tuned, but it would get the people what they want, and it would shut them up. So the fact that they actually did all this and they were still like, sorry y'all, but it's still going to take us another year. It's like, I feel somebody needs to be like, okay, thank you. Take your time when it's ready.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sucks, but hopefully that just means the product is going to be that much cooler when it gets here.
That's the hope. We will see.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
Not 1 year, 2 years. That's true. It's beta in a year. That's
beta
true.
is
That's
in
true.
12 months. Yeah.
Beta's in
or
June
11 months.
2024.
Yeah.
So-
Are you hearing that too, Zeke? The like slamming? Is that what you
Yeah,
just
is that-
I don't know if that's me. Is that in Co's house? There's something
I
slamming.
think it-
I don't know what it is.
I'll keep an ear off.
Yeah.
It
I'm gonna
very
look
well
out
could
my
be
front door and
kids.
see if there's construction or something. Hold on. Okay, now of course it's gonna take forever to load. I don't know what that is. It kept chat saying they
Going
heard
on
it as
now?
well. No, I'll tell you
Okay.
next time it happens.
Right.
Chat's hearing it though, so I know I'm not.
I was
crazy.
slamming my desk, accentuating my points. Was that it?
Maybe,
I tend to do that.
might be,
Yeah.
might be the case.
Slam it again, just real quick, as a test.
No, I wasn't really doing that.
Oh fuck!
I don't know.
I was looking forward to you showing a real emotion, and I
don't
guess
do
I
that.
was.
Wow.
No.
Was it this? No, that's not it. That I did this, but that's not it. I have a bunch of magnets that I'm fidgeting with because that's what I do. Anyways, PoE 2 will be. They also announced PoE 1. They got a new league coming out. I think or August 18th. That was
Auto
all
battling.
Yeah, it's got auto battling in it.